she had helped me reach 1,000 subscribers. When she told me about the conference, I smiled and helped fold her clothes, carefully tucking each corner as though the simple routine could somehow keep our lives from falling apart. She softly hummed a familiar tune under her breath, acting as if everything was perfectly normal. Then I noticed it, a small white packet slipping into her toiletry bag, its label clearly reading birth control. My entire body went numb in a way I couldn't even describe. I'd had a vasectomy 6 months earlier. She had sat beside me at the clinic, held my hand tightly, and said it was something we were doing together. So why did she still need those pills? I didn't question her. I simply held the packet in my hand for a moment longer, watching the bedroom light reflect across the printed label. My face stayed calm. My hands never shook. But inside, my thoughts raced without mercy. There had been signs I'd ignored. Changed passwords, late-night meetings, and a new perfume that lingered like an unanswered question. Even the polite, distant way she spoke to me lately had become the kind of voice that turned a husband into a complete stranger, had settled over our home like an unwelcome visitor. Even so, I had let hope soften the sharp edges of doubt. Love has a way of making men believe what they want to believe. I understood that now. That small packet was the breaking point. While she showered the night before her trip, I quietly opened her suitcase again with a calm, steady confidence I barely recognized in myself. I replaced the pills with capsules that looked exactly the same. Harmless in appearance, yet ruthless in purpose. A fast-acting laxative, bitter and unforgiving in its effects. I zipped the bag closed, slid it back into place, then returned to bed and played the role of the unchanged partner. When she asked for her charger, I handed it over and gently kissed her forehead. "Good luck at the conference," I said, and she answered with that familiar, empty smile. "Thanks, babe," she replied before walking away. After that, her messages stopped. The silence that once filled me with worry now felt like the expected echo of guilt. A few days later, I was scrolling through social media when I found the photo. There she was in a deep red dress at a corporate dinner, laughing over a wine glass surrounded by colleagues. The comments were full of sympathy. Someone praised her strength. Another wished her well, and I read between the lines until the story slowly came together. She'd been taken at the event. She suddenly became violently ill. They dismissed it as food poisoning. She collapsed right in front of the regional director, the very man she had been staying late with for months. I pictured the moment clearly, the color draining from her face, her hands trembling as she struggled to pull herself together, the embarrassment unfolding beneath the harsh fluorescent lights. It felt like justice, quiet and exact, measured down to the smallest detail. But I'd come to understand that revenge is never a single thunderclap. It is architecture. It rises one stone at a time until it can stand on its own. So while she recovered, distracted and exposed, I kept building. I moved silently through the financial framework of our lives. I accessed our joint account and shifted the money into places where it would be far more difficult for her to reach. I verified what she had never realized. The house title, the car lease, the corporate accounts, each one rested inside systems that I controlled. Then, with calm and clinical detachment, I drafted an email to her HR department. It was professional, concise, and anonymous. It included screenshots, forwarded messages, hotel receipts, every piece of evidence I had gathered, evidence she never imagined I could obtain. I carefully titled the subject line, "Inappropriate Conduct During Company Conference." Then, I pressed send. A week later, she came home exhausted and terrified. "I'm suspended," she whispered, her voice fragile with disbelief. "Someone reported me." She looked at me like a frightened child searching for reassurance. I watched her search, but gave her nothing. "Maybe it's for the best," I said quietly. She broke into tears, insisting she had no idea who could have done something like that. By then, I'd already put the legal framework in place. The lawyer she believed was representing her had been quietly reporting to mine all along. The house she had pleaded to help furnish would remain mine. The credit cards in her name had been frozen. She never noticed because she believed trust would always cover every blind spot. She had completely misjudged me. In anger, people often make rushed, reckless mistakes. I made none. I quietly moved more pieces into place after she left that night, suitcase in hand, mascara running down her tear-stained cheeks. I watched her leave without saying a single word. Outside, her car stalled on a cold, indifferent street. It was only a small mechanical inconvenience. Nothing dangerous, just perfectly matched to the mood I wanted it to reflect. The papers were signed, the accounts were divided, and she called me once afterward, her voice raw as she pleaded for understanding. "It was a mistake," she cried. "It meant nothing." I let the silence linger, carrying the full weight of everything that had been shattered. When I finally asked, "Was it worth it?" she broke down, and the sound of her tears slowly faded into silence. On the day our divorce became final, I stood in the room where she had packed for that conference months earlier. The familiar scent that once lingered in the drawers had disappeared. Her laughter, the sound that had once filled every corner of our home, had vanished. Only silence remained, and within it was a quiet satisfaction that felt like the end of a long, deliberate calculation. I opened the drawer where the packet had once rested. It was empty, an absence that felt both physical and symbolic. That was the moment I stopped being the man who simply believed and became the man who demanded consequences. Revenge, I reminded myself, was never cruelty for its own sake. It was a way of restoring balance. Piece by piece, I had rebuilt what she had destroyed. The structure now stood, cold, orderly, and immovable.